The gunshot echoed across the Montana prairie as Rose Owens clutched her bleeding arm, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. It wasn't the first time she'd been wounded, but this time she had nowhere left to run. The year was 1876, and she had lost everything: her family, her home, and now perhaps her life. As she stumbled toward the only light visible for miles, a small ranch house silhouetted against the darkening sky. Cole Irwin woke to the sound of a body collapsing on his porch. He grabbed his Winchester rifle from above the fireplace and cautiously opened the door, lamplight spilling out onto the form of a woman dressed in tattered clothes, her auburn hair matted with blood and dust. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the howling prairie wind. "They're coming." Cole didn't hesitate. He scooped her up as if she weighed nothing, kicked the door shut, and barred it with one hand while cradling her with the other. The woman had already lost consciousness, but he could see she was still breathing. Gently, he laid her on his bed and examined her wounds. "What kind of man shoots a woman?" he muttered, his calloused hands working quickly to clean and bandage her arm. The bullet had only grazed her, but she had lost a concerning amount of blood. As he worked, he noticed the scars, some old, some newer, that marked her body. Whatever life this woman had lived, it hadn't been kind. When dawn broke across the prairie, Rose opened her eyes to find herself in an unfamiliar room. Panic seized her as she tried to sit up, pain shooting through her arm. "Easy there," came a deep voice from the doorway. She turned to see a tall man with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes carrying a steaming mug. "You're safe now." "No one's safe," Rose replied, her voice hollow. "Not with me around." Cole set the mug of coffee on the bedside table and pulled up a chair. "Name's Cole Irwin. This is my ranch, modest as it may be, and you are—" She hesitated, wondering if she should lie, but something in his steady gaze made her decide against it. Rose Owens." "Well, Miss Owens, whoever was chasing you last night didn't follow you here, but I'd like to know what kind of trouble I've invited onto my land." Rose looked down at her bandaged arm, then back at Cole. His face showed no judgment, just concern and perhaps curiosity. His hands were those of a working man, strong, calloused, but they had tended to her wounds with surprising gentleness. "They're bounty hunters," she finally said, "but the charges against me are false. I didn't kill anyone." Cole nodded slowly. "I believe you. But I reckon there's more to the story." "There always is," Rose said bitterly. "But trust me, Mr. Irwin, you don't want to get involved. Once I can ride, I'll be on my way." "And where will you go?" The question hung in the air. Rose had no answer. Every town she tried to settle in had eventually turned her out once rumors of her past caught up. "I don't know," she admitted. "Somewhere they won't find me." Cole stood up, his tall frame blocking the morning light from the window. "Well, until you figure that out, you're welcome to stay here." "Nobody comes out this far unless I invite them." Rose wanted to protest, to tell this kind stranger that his charity was misplaced, but exhaustion overtook her again. As she drifted back to sleep, she heard him moving about the cabin, the sound somehow comforting despite everything. For 3 days, Rose drifted in and out of consciousness, fever claiming her as infection set into her wound. Cole rarely left her side, cooling her forehead with damp cloths and forcing her to drink water and broth when she was lucid enough. On the 4th day, Rose woke clear-headed for the first time. Sunlight streamed through the window, and she could hear the sounds of cattle and horses outside. Carefully, she swung her legs over the side of the bed and tested her strength. Her arm throbbed, but the worst of the pain had subsided. She found a clean dress laid out on a chair, plain but well made, though much too large for her frame. After changing, she followed the smell of cooking food to find Cole at the stove, his back to her. "You're up," he said without turning around. "Good, I was beginning to worry." "How did you know I was there?" Rose asked, surprised. Cole glanced over his shoulder with a small smile. "Been on my own out here for 5 years. You learn to hear everything." He gestured to a chair at the small wooden table. "Sit, eat, we need to get your strength back." Rose sat down, watching as he placed a plate of eggs and biscuits before her. "Why are you helping me?" she asked bluntly. Cole settled across from her with his own plate. "Out here you help folks who need it, that's all there is to it. Even criminals. Are you a criminal, Rose Owens?" She held his gaze. "According to the law, yes. And according to the truth." Rose pushed her food around her plate. "I killed a man," she admitted, "but he was going to kill me first. He'd already killed my sister." Cole nodded, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. "Self-defense isn't a crime where I come from. It is when the man you kill is the sheriff's brother." Rose's voice was bitter. "It doesn't matter that he was drunk and violent. It doesn't matter that he beat my sister to death when she tried to leave him. All that matters is I put a bullet in his chest, and now I have a price on my head." "Where did this happen?" "Virginia City. About a year ago." Cole whistled low. "That's a hard place for justice if you're on the wrong side of the powerful." They ate in silence for a while, Rose surprised by how hungry she was once she started eating. The food was simple but good, and it was the first real meal she'd had in weeks. "I can't stay," she said finally, setting down her fork. "Those bounty hunters will keep looking. They almost had me in Billings. I can't bring trouble to your door after you've been so kind." Cole leaned back in his chair, studying her. 500 acres of trouble between my door and the nearest town, and I'm not without friends or resources, but it's your choice." Rose stood, suddenly feeling trapped by his kindness. "You don't understand. Everyone who helps me ends up hurt or worse. I'm too broken to be around decent people anymore." Cole didn't move, didn't try to stop her as she backed away, but his words followed her to the door. "Then we'll mend each other slow," he said quietly. "Because I've got my share of breaks too, Rose Owens." She froze, her hand on the latch. "What do you mean?" "War leaves marks that don't show," he said simply. "So does losing family. I fought for the Union, lost my brother at Gettysburg. My parents couldn't bear it, died of grief within a year of each other. Came out west to start fresh, but some things you can't outrun." Rose turned back, really looking at him for the first time. Behind the strength and capability, she could see the shadows of old pain in his eyes. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "So you know you're not the only one carrying ghosts." Cole stood and began clearing the plates. "Stay or go, it's your choice, but know this. I've got a good eye, steady hands, and I'm not afraid of a fight if it comes to that." Rose hesitated. The offer of safety was tempting, but she had trusted before and been betrayed. Yet something about Cole Irwin's straightforward manner made her want to believe him. "I can work," she said finally. "I won't be a burden." A smile tugged at the corner of Cole's mouth. "Never thought you would be. Rest today. Tomorrow, if you're feeling up to it, I could use help with the spring calves." Rose nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. One day at a time, she told herself. Just until she was strong enough to move on, but one day turned into a week, and a week into a month. Spring bloomed across the prairie, and Rose found herself settling into life at the Irwin Ranch. The work was hard but satisfying. Cole taught her to ride properly, to mend fences, and to help with the cattle. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. They rarely spoke of their pasts, but the comfortable silence between them said more than words could. Rose began to sleep through the night without nightmares. The haunted look in her eyes began to fade. June brought scorching heat and the cattle drive to market in Helena. Cole was hesitant to leave Rose alone at the ranch. "I'll be fine," she insisted, helping him pack provisions for the journey. "The bounty hunters have probably given up by now." Cole frowned. "It'll be 3 weeks, maybe 4. That's a long time to be out here alone." "I've managed worse," Rose said with a wry smile. "Besides, someone has to look after the place." In truth, the thought of being alone again frightened her, but she wouldn't admit it. She had grown too dependent on Cole's steady presence, on the safety she felt in his company. It wasn't good to need someone that much. The morning Cole left with the cattle and his 2 ranch hands, Tom and Charlie, Rose stood in the yard watching until they disappeared over the distant hills. The ranch felt suddenly vast and empty without Cole's deep voice or his footsteps on the wooden floors. For a week, Rose kept busy with chores and caring for the remaining animals. She practiced shooting with Cole's spare revolver, her aim improving daily. At night, she slept with the gun under her pillow, just in case. On the 8th day, as Rose was hanging laundry to dry, she spotted a dust cloud on the horizon. Visitors were rare at the isolated ranch, and Cole wasn't due back for at least another week. Alarm bells rang in her mind. Quickly, she grabbed the revolver from where she kept it in her apron pocket and moved to the porch, where she could see the approaching riders more clearly. 3 men moving fast. As they drew closer, Rose's blood ran cold. She recognized the lead rider, Harlan Beck, the most persistent of the bounty hunters who had been tracking her. Rose ducked inside the house, her heart hammering. She could run. There was a horse saddled in the barn, ready for her daily rounds of the property. But something made her hesitate. This was her home now, Cole's home. She was tired of running. Taking a deep breath, Rose checked the revolver's chambers, making sure all 6 were loaded. Then she positioned herself by the front window, where she could see without being seen. The riders pulled up in the yard, dust billowing around them. Harlan Beck was a large man with a cruel face and a reputation for bringing in bounties dead rather than alive. His 2 companions looked equally unsavory. "Rose Owens," Beck called out, "we know you're in there. Come out peaceful-like and nobody needs to get hurt." Rose remained silent, watching as the men exchanged glances. One of them dismounted and started toward the barn. "Checking for horses," Beck explained loudly. "We know someone's here. Laundry's still wet." He gestured to her clothes on the line. "Got a fresh saddled horse in here, Harlan," the man called from the barn. Beck smiled, a predatory expression that made Rose's skin crawl. "You've led us on quite a chase, Miss Owens, but it ends today. Dead or alive, you're coming back to Virginia City to face justice." Rose's mind raced. If she showed herself, they'd shoot her on the spot, claiming she resisted. If she stayed hidden, they'd search the house and find her anyway. Either way, she was outnumbered and outgunned. The second man had dismounted and was circling around to the back of the house. Rose moved quickly to the rear window to keep track of him. As she did, she noticed movement in the distance. Riders, still far off but approaching rapidly. Her heart leaped. Could it be Cole returning early? She couldn't be sure, but she needed to buy time. "I'm not armed." She called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll come out, but I want your word I'll be taken back alive." Beck laughed. "You have my word as a gentleman, Miss Owens. Come on out with your hands up." Rose knew his word meant nothing, but she needed to distract them from the approaching riders. Slowly, she moved to the front door, keeping the revolver hidden in the folds of her skirt. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and stepped onto the porch, her empty hands raised. Beck's smile widened as he raised his rifle. "You know, dead is easier to transport than alive," he said casually. "Less complaints on the journey." "You gave your word," Rose said, her eyes darting to the horizon. The riders were closer now, 5 or 6 of them, moving fast. "My word to a murderer," Beck sneered, "not worth much." He aimed his rifle at her heart. The sound of galloping hooves made him pause. He turned, cursing as he saw the approaching riders. Rose seized the moment, drawing her hidden revolver and firing in one fluid motion. The bullet caught Beck in the shoulder, spinning him backward off his horse. The other bounty hunters reacted instantly, both firing at Rose. She dove back into the house as bullets splintered the doorframe around her. Rolling to her feet, she took position by the window, returning fire to keep them pinned down. Outside, the situation had suddenly changed. The new riders had arrived, and Rose's heart soared as she recognized Cole at the lead, his rifle already drawn. The 2 remaining bounty hunters found themselves caught in the open, outnumbered by Cole and his men. "Drop your weapons," Cole's voice rang out, fierce and commanding. "You're trespassing on my land." One of the bounty hunters unwisely raised his gun toward Cole. He never got to fire. Cole's shot caught him in the chest, and he fell without a sound. The last man immediately threw down his weapon, hands rising in surrender. Beck was struggling to his feet, blood soaking his shirt from Rose's shot to his shoulder. "This woman is wanted for murder in Virginia City," he shouted. "We have the law on our side," Cole dismounted, keeping his rifle trained on Beck. "This woman is under my protection, and you just tried to shoot her in cold blood on my property. I'd say the law's got questions for you too." Two of Cole's men had the remaining bounty hunter covered, while another checked on the fallen man. Rose cautiously emerged from the house, her revolver still in hand. "You're back early," she said to Cole, trying to keep her voice light despite the trembling in her limbs. The corner of his mouth lifted in a half smile. "Got a fair price faster than expected. Good thing too." His eyes scanned her from head to toe, checking for injuries. "You hurt?" Rose shook her head. "Thanks to your timing, no." Cole turned his attention back to Beck, who was now sitting on the ground, clutching his wounded shoulder. "Charlie, Tom, tie these two up. We're taking them to the marshal in Helena." "You can't do that," Beck protested. "We have a legal bounty for a crime I didn't commit," Rose interrupted, stepping forward. Anger had replaced her fear. "Edward Miller was beating my sister to death. I tried to stop him, and he came at me with a knife. I shot him to save my own life after he'd already killed her." "That's not how the sheriff tells it," Beck snarled. "The sheriff is his brother," Rose shot back. "He covered up the truth to protect his family's name." Cole's men had finished securing the bounty hunters. Cole turned to Rose, his expression grave. "This needs to end, Rose. You can't keep running forever." She looked up at him, seeing the determination in his eyes. "What are you suggesting? We go to Helena together. Talk to Marshal Williams, he's a fair man. Get him to look into your case, contact the territorial governor if necessary." Rose shook her head, fear gripping her again. "They'll arrest me the moment I set foot in a town." Cole took her hand, his touch gentle despite the calluses. "Not if you're with me. I fought alongside Williams in the war. He'll listen before he acts." Rose looked down at their joined hands, then at the bounty hunters being loaded onto their horses. Beck's hateful glare promised this wouldn't end here. "I'm too broken to face this," she whispered. "Too scared." Cole's fingers tightened around hers. "Then we'll mend each other slow," he repeated his words from months ago. "I'll be with you every step." For the first time since her sister's death, Rose felt something like hope. "Together, then," she agreed softly. The journey to Helena took 2 days, with Cole's men guarding the bounty hunters. Rose rode beside Cole, anxiety growing with every mile that brought them closer to civilization. She had been hiding for so long, the thought of willingly walking into a marshal's office terrified her. "What if they don't believe me?" she asked Cole as they made camp the first night. Cole was tending the fire, his face serious in the dancing light. "Then we find evidence. Someone in Virginia City must know the truth about Edward Miller. His brother controls that town. No man controls everything," Cole said confidently. "There are always cracks in power." The following afternoon, they rode into Helena. The town had grown considerably since the gold rush days, with proper buildings replacing many of the hastily constructed structures of earlier years. Rose pulled her hat low over her face as they passed curious onlookers. The marshal's office was a solid brick building near the center of town. Cole instructed his men to wait outside with the prisoners while he and Rose went in. Marshal James Williams was a barrel-chested man with a silver-streaked beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He rose from behind his desk when they entered, surprise evident on his face. "Cole Irwin, as I live and breathe. What brings you to town outside of trading season?" Cole removed his hat. "James, we need to talk, private-like if possible." The marshal's eyes shifted to Rose, narrowed slightly, then returned to Cole. "That's serious, is it? Jenkins, take a walk," he instructed his deputy, who promptly exited. Once they were alone, Cole laid out the situation, explaining how Rose had come to his ranch wounded, and how the bounty hunters had tried to kill her rather than take her in alive. Rose then told her story, the full truth about her sister, Margaret's abusive marriage to Edward Miller, his drunken rage that had ended her life, and how Rose had been forced to shoot him in self-defense. "Sheriff Miller twisted everything," she concluded. Said I murdered his brother in cold blood over a gambling debt. The judge was his cousin. I never stood a chance at a fair trial, so I ran. Marshal Williams listened without interruption, his expression inscrutable. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "That's a serious accusation against a fellow lawman," he said finally. "It's the truth," Rose insisted. "Truth's a slippery thing without evidence," the marshal countered. "Even if I believe you, and I'm not saying I can't just dismiss a legal bounty based on your word alone." Cole stepped forward. "What about the bounty hunter's behavior? They were going to shoot her in cold blood on my property." Williams sighed. "That I can act on. Attempted murder trumps a bounty claim." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the men waiting with their prisoners. "I'll hold them for now, send wires to verify their credentials. If they're licensed bounty hunters, they've violated every code of conduct." He turned back to Rose. "As for you, Miss Owens, I should by rights hold you as well until this is sorted." Rose tensed, her hand instinctively seeking Cole's. "But," Williams continued, noting the gesture, "given the circumstances, I'm willing to take a different approach. Cole vouches for you, and that carries weight with me. I'll give you 2 weeks to bring me something that supports your version of events. In the meantime, stay close to town where I can find you if needed." Relief flooded through Rose. It wasn't freedom, but it was more than she dared hope for. "Thank you, Marshal," Cole said, gripping his friend's hand. Williams nodded grimly. "Don't thank me yet. Sheriff Miller won't take kindly to my questioning his authority. This could get messy." Outside, Cole's men had already handed over the bounty hunters to the deputy. Cole instructed them to return to the ranch, keeping only Charlie with them for additional protection. "We'll need rooms," Cole told Rose as they walked toward the hotel, "and then we need to plan our next move." "Virginia City," Rose said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We need to go back to where it happened, find someone willing to speak the truth about Edward Miller." Cole looked down at her, concern evident in his eyes. "That's dangerous territory for you, I know, but I'm tired of running, Cole. I want my life back." He nodded, his hand finding the small of her back as they crossed the street. The simple gesture of support meant more to Rose than words could express. They secured rooms at the Montana Hotel, 2 adjoining rooms for propriety's sake, though Rose knew the gossips would talk regardless. After a proper meal, the first restaurant food she'd had in over a year, they gathered in Cole's room to plan. "The stagecoach leaves for Virginia City tomorrow morning," Charlie informed them after checking the schedules. "Takes most of a day to get there." Cole nodded. "We'll be on it." "Charlie, you'll stay here, keep an eye on things with the marshal. If anything changes, get word to us immediately." "Who might help us in Virginia City?" Cole asked Rose as they spread out a map of the mining town on the bed. Rose thought carefully. "Margaret worked at the milliner's shop owned by Mrs. Holloway. She was kind to us, and she saw Margaret's bruises more than once." She traced her finger along the map. "The saloon where Edward did his drinking, the Silver Dollar. The bartender, an older man named Phillips, he threw Edward out a few times for starting fights." "Any doctors who might have treated your sister's injuries?" Rose nodded. "Dr. Whitman. He came to our house once when Margaret couldn't even get out of bed. He wanted to report it, but Margaret begged him not to." Cole made mental notes of each name. "That's a start. Anyone else who might have witnessed his behavior or the events of that night?" "Our neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She ran the laundry next door." "She heard everything through the walls, I'm sure of it." Rose hesitated. "And Reverend Doyle. Margaret confided in him, asked for guidance. I don't know what he told her, but he knew about the abuse." Cole reached out, covering her trembling hand with his. "You're not alone in this anymore, Rose. We'll find the truth together." That night, despite her exhaustion, Rose found sleep elusive. The thought of returning to Virginia City filled her with dread. What if someone recognized her? What if Sheriff Miller was waiting? What if no one would speak against him? A soft knock at the connecting door startled her from her thoughts. "Rose, you awake?" Cole's voice was low. "Yes," she replied, sitting up in bed. "Come in." The door opened and Cole stepped into her room, still fully dressed. "Heard you pacing," he explained. "Thought you might want company." Rose smiled weakly. "Just nervous about tomorrow." Cole sat on the edge of her bed, his weight creating a dip in the mattress that made her slide slightly toward him. "That's understandable, but we have a plan and we'll be careful. What if it doesn't work? What if we can't prove anything?" "Then we try something else," Cole said simply. "I'm not giving up on this, Rose. I'm not giving up on you." The conviction in his voice made her throat tight with emotion. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk so much for me?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching hers in the dim light from the single lamp. "Because in all my years since the war, you're the first person who made me feel like I wasn't just existing anymore, like there might be something worth building a future for." Rose's heart hammered in her chest. She had felt the growing connection between them over the past months, but neither had put it into words until now. "I'm scared, Cole," she admitted. "Not just of what happens tomorrow, but of this of caring for someone again. Everyone I've ever loved has been taken from me." Cole reached out, his calloused fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "That's a fear I understand all too well, but at some point you have to decide if the risk of losing is worse than never having at all." Rose leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "Stay with me tonight?" she asked softly. "Just to talk, to not be alone." Cole nodded. He moved to the chair by the window, giving her the space she needed while still providing the comfort of his presence. They talked late into the night about their childhoods, about the war, about the dreams they'd once had before life had hardened them. When Rose finally drifted to sleep, it was with the sound of Cole's steady voice in her ears, telling her about the stars over Montana in summer. Morning came too quickly. They boarded the stagecoach to Virginia City just as the sun was rising, the only passengers at that early hour. Rose wore a simple dress with a high collar and had pinned her hair up under a modest bonnet, a disguise of respectability that she hoped would prevent immediate recognition. The journey was long and dusty. As the familiar mountains came into view, Rose's anxiety grew. This place held nothing but painful memories for her. "We'll start with Dr. Whitman," Cole decided as the stagecoach rolled into town late that afternoon. "A doctor's testimony about your sister's injuries would carry significant weight." They took a room at a small boarding house on the outskirts of town, away from the main thoroughfare where Rose might be recognized. After washing away the dust of travel, they set out to find the doctor's office. Dr. Whitman was just closing up for the day when they arrived. He was an older man with kind eyes and a perpetually worried expression. "I'm sorry, I'm not taking any more patients today," he began, then stopped abruptly as he recognized Rose. "Good heavens. Miss Owens, is that really you?" "Please, Dr. Whitman," Rose said urgently. "We need to speak with you privately." The doctor glanced nervously at the street before ushering them inside and locking the door behind them. "This is dangerous, Miss Owens. There's still a bounty on your head." "I know," Rose replied. "That's why we're here. We need your help to clear my name." Dr. Whitman led them to his office at the back of the building, where they wouldn't be visible from the street. As Rose introduced Cole and explained their situation, the doctor's expression grew increasingly troubled. "I always knew Edward Miller was a brute," he said when she had finished. "The injuries I treated your sister for could not have been accidental as she claimed. But the Miller family has held power in this town for 3 generations. Speaking against them has consequences." "More consequences than letting an innocent woman hang?" Cole asked quietly. The doctor flinched. "No, of course not," he sighed heavily. "I have detailed records of your sister's injuries, and I remember clearly the night she died. Sheriff Miller prevented me from performing a proper examination of either body, claiming jurisdiction. But I saw enough to know that Margaret had been severely beaten before her death." "Would you be willing to put that in writing, Doctor?" Cole pressed, "and testify to it if necessary?" Dr. Whitman hesitated, fear evident in his expression. "If it comes to that, yes. But I'm just one voice against the Millers. One honest voice is a start, Rose said gratefully, and we're gathering more. They left with the doctor's written statement sealed in an envelope. It was growing dark, and Rose was anxious to be off the streets. We should return to the boarding house, she said, pulling her bonnet lower. Try the milliner's shop tomorrow morning. They were crossing a side street when a voice called out, stopping them cold. Well, well, look who's returned to the scene of her crime. Sheriff John Miller stepped out of the shadows, his hand resting casually on his holstered gun. He was a tall man with cold eyes and a resemblance to his dead brother that made Rose's stomach twist with fear. Sheriff, Cole said calmly, shifting slightly to place himself between Miller and Rose. We were just passing through. Miller's laugh held no humor. With the woman who murdered my brother, I don't think so. His eyes narrowed as he studied Cole. And who might you be, stranger, harboring a known fugitive? Cole Irwin. And Miss Owens is under the protection of Marshal Williams in Helena, who is reviewing her case. This news clearly surprised the sheriff, but he recovered quickly. Williams has no jurisdiction here. This is my town, and I'm placing Rose Owens under arrest. Cole didn't move. On what evidence, Sheriff? Because we have testimony that your brother was beating his wife, Rose's sister, and that he attacked Rose when she tried to intervene. Miller's face darkened with anger. You're calling me a liar, mister. That's dangerous talk. I'm suggesting you might not have all the facts, Cole replied evenly. Or perhaps you chose to overlook certain facts out of family loyalty. The sheriff's hand tightened on his gun. I'm taking the woman in. Step aside or join her in a cell. Rose could feel the tension building, saw the dangerous glint in Miller's eyes. This confrontation could quickly turn deadly. Cole, she said softly, touching his arm, it's all right, I'll go with him. Cole glanced at her, surprise and concern in his expression. Trust me, she whispered. Keep gathering evidence. After a moment, Cole stepped aside, though every line of his body spoke of reluctance. I'll be watching, Sheriff, he warned. Any harm comes to her, you'll answer to more than just me. Miller smirked as he approached Rose, roughly grabbing her arm. Threatening an officer of the law, that's not wise, Irwin. Neither is abusing your badge, Cole retorted. The sheriff's only response was to jerk Rose forward, marching her toward the jailhouse at the center of town. She looked back once, meeting Cole's determined gaze. She was terrified, but somehow knowing he was there gave her strength. They had come too far to give up now. The cell was small and cold, with only a thin mattress on a metal frame and a bucket in the corner. Sheriff Miller shoved her inside with unnecessary force, causing her to stumble and fall to her knees. You should never have come back, he snarled, locking the door. I'm sending a wire to Judge Patterson tonight. We'll have a hanging by the end of the week. Rose got to her feet, facing him through the bars. Is that how justice works in your town, Sheriff? No trial, no evidence, just your word against mine. My brother's body is all the evidence I need, Miller spat. And Judge Patterson knows his duty to this community. After he left, Rose sank onto the hard mattress, trying to control her fear. She had to believe Cole would continue gathering testimony. She had to believe the truth would matter. Hours passed. The jailhouse grew quiet as night deepened. Rose had almost dozed off when she heard the soft scrape of a key in the outer door. She tensed, pressing back against the wall. The door opened, and a Chinese woman slipped inside. It took Rose a moment to recognize her former neighbor in the dim light, Mrs. Chen. Quiet, the woman whispered, glancing nervously at the door. I come to help. Your friend, he find me. She produced a key from her pocket. Sheriff, leave this on hook when drinking, not first time I take. Hope surged in Rose's chest as Mrs. Chen unlocked the cell door. Why are you helping me? The woman's face hardened. I hear everything through wall. Your sister cry many nights. The husband, he beat her, shout at her. The night she die, I hear him threaten you both. I hear gunshot. I see you run. She pressed something into Rose's hand. I write this down, what I hear that night. Truth. Rose clutched the folded paper, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you. Go now, Mrs. Chen urged. Your friend waits with horses behind laundry. Sheriff, he drink at saloon tonight, celebrate your capture. Rose followed the woman through the darkened streets, staying in shadows. When they reached the laundry, Cole was indeed waiting with two saddled horses, his face lighting with relief at the sight of her. Thank God, he murmured, pulling her into a brief, fierce embrace. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine, Rose assured him, returning his embrace before reluctantly pulling away. Mrs. Chen brought her testimony. She showed him the paper. And I assume Dr. Whitman gave you his statement, Cole nodded, helping her onto one of the horses, not just the doctor. I found Phillips from the saloon. He confirmed Edward Miller was violent when drunk, started fights regularly, and Mrs. Holloway from the millinery, she's prepared to testify that she saw Margaret's bruises many times. Mrs. Chen pressed a small bundle into Rose's hands. Food for journey. Go now, quickly. They thanked her and set off, keeping to back streets until they reached the edge of town. Only then did they spur the horses to a gallop, racing away from Virginia City under the cover of darkness. Where are we going? Rose called to Cole as they rode. Helena, he shouted back over the pounding of hooves. Marshal Williams needs to see this evidence before Sheriff Miller can cover it up. They rode hard through the night, stopping only to rest the horses. By dawn, they had put significant distance between themselves and Virginia City. As they watered the horses at a stream, Rose handed Cole the paper Mrs. Chen had given her. Read it, she urged. I want to know what she heard. Cole unfolded the paper, squinting in the early light to read the careful handwriting. She describes the argument, Edward's drunken threats. She heard Margaret's screams, then silence. Then Edward threatening you, the sound of a struggle and a single gunshot. He looked up at Rose. This matches exactly what you told us. Rose nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders, an independent witness who heard everything. And she's willing to testify, she said she would if needed, Cole confirmed. Along with the others. Mrs. Holloway even gave me a letter Margaret wrote to her, asking for help hiding from Edward. It's dated just 3 days before her death. Hope bloomed in Rose's chest. For the first time since that terrible night, she allowed herself to believe that justice might be possible. They reached Helena by nightfall the following day, exhausted but determined. Marshal Williams was still in his office, reviewing paperwork. I'd say this is a surprise, he drawled as they entered, but somehow I expected you two would stir up trouble. Sheriff Miller arrested Rose illegally, Cole explained, but we've got what we came for, evidence and testimony supporting her version of events. Williams accepted the stack of papers Cole handed him, his expression growing increasingly serious as he read through the statements. This is compelling, he acknowledged finally. Multiple witnesses attesting to Edward Miller's violent character, specific testimony about his abuse of Margaret, and Mrs. Chen's account of the night in question. He looked up at Rose. Why didn't these people speak up at the time? Fear, Rose said simply. The Millers own half the businesses in Virginia City and control most of the rest through loans. Speaking against them means losing your livelihood, maybe worse. The marshal nodded grimly. I've seen towns like that, but this, he held up the papers, this changes things. I'll wire the territorial governor tonight, request a formal review of your case. And until then, Cole asked, Williams sighed. I expect Sheriff Miller will be arriving in Helena as soon as he discovers Rose is missing. I can delay him with bureaucracy for a while, but eventually this will come to a head. He thought for a moment. I suggest you return to your ranch, Cole. Stay there until I send word. I'll post a deputy I trust to ensure you're not disturbed. Rose felt a flood of relief at the thought of returning to the safety of Cole's ranch. Thank you, Marshal, for believing us, for helping. Don't thank me yet, Williams cautioned. The territorial justice system moves slowly and the Millers have friends in high places. This could take time. As they left the marshal's office, Cole took Rose's hand, squeezing it gently. We've done all we can for now. Let's go home. Home. The word stirred something deep in Rose's heart. In the chaos of the past days, She hadn't had time to fully process what Cole had said that night in the hotel about her making him feel alive again, about building a future. Now, as they prepared to return to the ranch together, she wondered what that future might hold. They collected Charlie, who had been keeping watch at the hotel, and set out early the next morning. The journey back to the ranch was quieter than their flight to Helena, but tension still hung in the air. None of them would truly relax until they were safely home, away from the reach of Sheriff Miller and his allies. As they crested the final hill and the ranch came into view, Rose felt a swell of emotion. The modest house, the barn, the corrals in just a few months, this place had become more of a home to her than anywhere since her parents died. "Everything looks quiet," Cole observed as they approached. "That's a good sign." They were halfway across the yard when the front door opened and Tom stepped out, rifle in hand. "About time you got back," he called, relief evident in his voice. "Been keeping watch since yesterday." "Trouble?" Cole asked sharply, dismounting and helping Rose down. Tom nodded grimly. "Ryder came yesterday, asking questions about a woman staying here. Didn't give his name, but had a star on his vest under his coat, saw it when he reached for his tobacco." "Miller's getting desperate," Charlie commented, taking the horse's reins, "sending men ahead while he deals with the marshal." Cole's face hardened. "He can send whoever he wants. This is my land, and Rose is under my protection until the territorial governor reviews her case." They moved inside, where the familiar surroundings brought Rose a measure of comfort despite the lingering threat. Cole immediately set about organizing watches, ensuring someone would be alert at all times. "I'm sorry," Rose said quietly when they were alone in the kitchen. "I've brought nothing but danger to your door." Cole turned from the stove where he was heating coffee, his expression softening as he looked at her. "You've brought a lot more than that, Rose Owens." "What do you mean?" He crossed the room to stand before her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Before you stumbled onto my porch that night, I was just existing, working the ranch, trading cattle, surviving but not really living." His hand came up to cup her cheek. "You brought life back to this place, to me." Rose's heart hammered in her chest. A sharp knock at the door interrupted her. They both tensed, Cole's hand dropping to the revolver at his hip. "Cole, it's Deputy Foster from Helena," called a voice from outside. Cole relaxed slightly but approached the door cautiously. The man on the porch wore the marshal's badge and carried a sealed envelope. "Marshal Williams sent me," he explained, handing over the letter. "I'm to stay here as protection until further notice." Cole broke the seal and read quickly, his expression clearing. "The governor has agreed to review Rose's case personally," he announced. "Williams has officially suspended the bounty until the review is complete." Relief flooded through Rose. It wasn't over, but it was a significant victory. "What about Sheriff Miller?" "Williams says he arrived in Helena demanding your arrest, but was forced to return to Virginia City empty-handed. The governor's involvement ties his hands for now." The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "Sheriff wasn't happy from what I heard, made some threats before he left. That's why the marshal sent me, just in case Miller decides to take matters into his own hands." Cole nodded grimly. "We'll stay alert, thank you, deputy." As summer progressed into autumn, life at the ranch settled into a new routine. Deputy Foster remained, becoming an extra hand around the place while maintaining his vigilance. Rose continued helping with the ranch work, finding peace in the daily tasks despite the uncertainty hanging over her future. In the evenings, she and Cole would often sit on the porch, watching the sun set behind the distant mountains. Sometimes they talked about the case, about what might happen when the governor finally made his decision. Other times they spoke of simpler things, childhood memories, books they had read, dreams they still harbored, and sometimes they didn't need to speak at all. There was a comfort in their silences, a growing understanding between them that transcended words. Rose found herself watching Cole when he wasn't looking, the strength in his hands as he mended tack, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. the gentleness he showed to even the most stubborn calf or skittish colt. She was falling in love with him, slowly but inevitably. The realization should have frightened her after everything she'd lost, but somehow it didn't. Instead, it felt like coming home after a long journey. One crisp October evening, as they sat side by side on the porch swing Cole had built during the summer, Rose finally found the courage to speak of what had been growing between them. "Do you remember what you said that night in Helena, about me making you feel alive again?" Cole turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the golden light of sunset. "I remember every word." Rose took a deep breath. "I feel the same way. Before I came here, I was just running, surviving, but now," she hesitated, then reached for his hand. "Now I can imagine a future again." "And you're part of it." Cole's fingers intertwined with hers, warm and strong. "Is that what you want, Rose, a future here with me, more than anything?" she whispered. "If my name is cleared, if we're free of this shadow hanging over us, I want to build a life here, with you." Cole lifted their joined hands, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then that's what we'll fight for." Their moment was interrupted by the sound of a horse approaching at speed. Both tensed, Cole reaching instinctively for his revolver as they stood. Deputy Foster emerged from the barn, rifle ready, but relaxed as he recognized the rider. "It's from the marshal," he called, lowering his weapon. The messenger, dust-covered and weary, handed Cole an official-looking envelope. "Marshal Williams said to deliver this immediately, sir." Rose held her breath as Cole broke the seal and unfolded the document. His eyes scanned the page quickly, then he looked up at her, a slow smile spreading across his face. "The governor has reviewed your case and found significant evidence of judicial misconduct," he read aloud. "All charges against you have been dismissed, and a formal investigation into Sheriff John Miller's conduct has been ordered." Rose's knees weakened with relief, and Cole caught her, pulling her into a tight embrace. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "You're free." She couldn't speak, could only cling to him as tears of joy and disbelief streamed down her face. After so long running, hiding, fearing for her life, the nightmare was finally ending. That night they celebrated with a special dinner. Tom rode to the nearest town for supplies, returning with wine and ingredients for a feast. The atmosphere in the house was jubilant, everyone talking and laughing with a lightness that had been missing for months. Later, when the others had retired for the night, Rose and Cole returned to the porch. The stars shone brilliantly in the clear autumn sky, and a nearly full moon cast silver light across the land. "I can hardly believe it's real," Rose said, leaning against the railing. "I keep expecting to wake up and find it was a dream." Cole moved to stand beside her, his shoulder touching hers. "No dream," he assured her. "The marshal included a copy of the governor's full findings. Sheriff Miller falsified evidence, intimidated witnesses, and influenced the judge, his cousin, to ensure your conviction. The whole case has been thrown out. And Margaret, does she get justice too? The governor has ordered her case reopened as a murder investigation," Cole confirmed gently. "Edward Miller will go down in history as the abuser and killer he was, not as a victim." Rose closed her eyes, feeling a weight lift from her soul. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me when no one else would, for fighting beside me when you could have turned me away." Cole turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. "I could never have turned you away, Rose. From the moment you collapsed on my porch, something in me recognized something in you. Two broken souls looking for healing." She said, "I'm too broken," Rose remembered with a soft smile. "The cowboy said, then we'll mend each other slow. And we have been, haven't we?" Cole's hand came up to cup her cheek. "Healing each other bit by bit." Rose leaned into his touch. "Yes," she whispered. "You've shown me how to trust again, how to hope, how to stop running." Cole's eyes, so often guarded, were open with emotion as he looked down at her. "And you've reminded me what it means to care deeply for someone, to have something worth fighting for." Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head until his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. Rose answered by sliding her arms around his neck, drawing him closer as the kiss deepened into something that spoke of promises and possibilities. When they finally parted, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me, Rose, not because you need protection, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because this is where you want to be, because we belong together." "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "This is where I want to be, where I've found home." As winter settled over the Montana prairie, Rose and Cole were married in a simple ceremony in Helena, with Marshal Williams giving the bride away and their ranch hands standing as witnesses. The governor, true to his word, had pursued the investigation into Sheriff Miller, who now awaited trial for his crimes. The people of Virginia City, freed from his intimidation, had come forward with years of grievances and accusations. Rose wore a new dress of deep blue, her auburn hair adorned with white flowers. Cole couldn't take his eyes off her as they spoke their vows, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. "I never thought I'd find happiness again," Rose told him as they danced at their small reception. "After Margaret died, I believed that part of my life was over." Cole held her close, swaying to the music. "We've both had our share of loss. But perhaps that makes what we've found all the more precious." When they returned to the ranch, their ranch now, truly snow was falling gently, transforming the landscape into a pristine wonderland. Cole lifted Rose into his arms to carry her across the threshold, both of them laughing as he nearly slipped on the icy porch. Inside, a fire blazed in the hearth, warming the house that had become their home. As Cole set her down, Rose took in the familiar surroundings with new eyes. This place that had once been her refuge was now the foundation for their future together. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his arms still around her waist. Rose smiled up at him, her heart full. "I'm thinking about how far we've come. How two broken people found each other and created something whole and beautiful." "We mended each other," Cole agreed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And we'll keep doing so every day for the rest of our lives." As spring arrived, bringing new life to the ranch, Rose had news of her own to share. She found Cole in the barn one morning, mending a bridle with his usual meticulous care. "I've been to see Dr. Morton in town," she said, trying to keep her voice casual despite her excitement. Cole looked up immediately, concern crossing his features. "Are you ill?" Rose shook her head, a smile breaking through her attempt at seriousness. "Not ill, just expecting." It took a moment for her meaning to register, then Cole's face transformed with joy. He dropped the bridle and crossed to her in 2 strides, lifting her off her feet in a gentle but exuberant embrace. "A baby, we're having a baby," Rose laughed, nodding as happy tears filled her eyes. "In the fall, the doctor says, October most likely." Cole set her down carefully, as if she had suddenly become fragile, then dropped to his knees before her, placing a reverent hand on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I'm your pa, and I promise I'll always keep you and your ma safe." Rose placed her hand over his, overwhelmed by the tenderness of the moment. "We're building a family," she marveled, "something I never thought I'd have." Cole rose to his feet, gathering her close. "A family, a home, a future, everything we fought for, Rose, everything we deserve." Throughout the summer, as Rose's pregnancy progressed, they prepared for the new arrival. Cole built a cradle from pine wood, carving intricate designs of stars and mountains along its edges. Rose sewed tiny garments and blankets, each stitch filled with love for the child growing within her. The ranch prospered that year with a bountiful harvest and healthy calves. They hired 2 more hands to help with the expanding operation, and Cole began plans for adding rooms to the house. "Our family might keep growing," he explained with a grin when Rose questioned the size of his plans. "I always wanted a house full of children." Rose, who had once believed herself too broken for such dreams, found herself eagerly anticipating that future. The past with its pain and fear receded further with each passing day, replaced by the joy of the present and the promise of tomorrow. When October arrived with its crisp days and golden light, Rose felt ready. The baby's room was prepared, advice had been gathered from every mother in the county, and Cole had arranged for the doctor to stay in the guest room for the final week of her confinement. Their daughter arrived on a clear, cold morning as the first snow of the season began to fall. After hours of labor, Rose held their tiny miracle in her arms, exhausted but exhilarated. "She's perfect," Cole whispered, perched on the edge of the bed, one finger caught in the baby's surprisingly strong grip. Tears shone in his eyes as he looked from his daughter to his wife, just like her mother. "What shall we name her?" Rose asked, though they had discussed possibilities for months. Cole didn't hesitate. "Margaret," he said gently, "for your sister, if that's all right with you." Emotion welled in Rose's throat. "Margaret Hope Irwin," she agreed, "a name that honors the past but looks to the future." As winter deepened, the little family settled into new routines. Margaret Maggie, as they came to call her, thrived, growing stronger each day. She had her father's thoughtful eyes and her mother's determination, evident even as an infant. On Christmas Eve, with snow piled high outside and a fire crackling in the hearth, Rose sat in the rocking chair Cole had made for her, nursing Maggie. Cole watched them from across the room, his heart so full it seemed impossible it had once been hollow with grief and loneliness. "I have something for you," he said, retrieving a small package from the mantel. An early Christmas gift. Rose accepted it with her free hand, curious. Unwrapping the paper, she found a small wooden box beautifully carved with roses and vines. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a gold locket. "Open it," Cole encouraged. Rose did, finding a tiny portrait of Margaret on one side and a lock of the baby's downy hair on the other. "It's beautiful," she murmured, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you." Cole knelt beside the rocking chair, his hand resting on his daughter's head. "I wanted you to have something to keep them both close to your heart, your sister and our daughter, the past and the future." Rose leaned forward to kiss him, a gentle gesture full of the deep love that had grown between them. "I never thought I could be this happy," she confessed. "That night when I collapsed on your porch, I was ready to die. I had nothing left to live for." "And now?" Cole asked softly. Rose looked down at their sleeping daughter, then back at her husband. "Now I have everything to live for, a family, a home, love," she smiled through her tears. "We really did mend each other, didn't we?" "We did," Cole agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "And we'll keep doing so every day, for all the days we have together." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the Montana landscape in pristine white. Inside the warm house, the family Cole and Rose had created together against all odds, despite all wounds, slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they had found in each other not just healing, but a love strong enough to last a lifetime. Years later, when Maggie had been joined by two brothers and the ranch had grown into one of the most prosperous in the territory, Rose would sometimes stand on the porch at dusk, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Cole would often find her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder as they shared the peaceful moment. "What are you thinking about?" he would ask. And Rose would lean back into his embrace, grateful beyond words for the life they had built together, for the broken pieces they had helped each other mend. "I'm thinking about how sometimes the things that break us are also the things that lead us to where we're meant to be," she would answer. "How if I hadn't lost everything, I might never have found my way to you." Cole would turn her in his arms then, looking into the eyes that had captivated him from the first moment he saw them. "We found each other," he would say, "and in finding each other, we found ourselves." And as their children played in the yard, and the sun set on another day of the life they had created together, Rose knew with absolute certainty that all the pain of her past had led her to this moment, this happiness, this love. Two broken souls who had mended each other, slowly but surely, creating something stronger and more beautiful than either could have imagined alone.